Hello, everyone, and welcome to this roundtable as part of WTIN's Innovate Textile and Apparel Virtual Trade Show. I'm Jessica Owen. I'm the Deputy Digital Editor at WTIN, and I'll be moderating today's session on consumer behaviour shifts in the activewear sector. Now, this should be quite an interesting session, I hope, because exercise has become even more important this year with COVID-19. I think a few months ago when people were advised to stay at home and you could only maybe go out for essential sort of activities, getting out for just a walk or a run or being able to get on your bike, I think gave lots of people a sense of focus. And so that's meant that even people who didn't used to exercise have sort of gotten more involved, which is great. And also, sort of on top of that as well, consumers are demanding more things from their activewear. So you've not only got people sort of actually joining, but you've got the people already in this sort of space sort of wanting more. So I think I've read some reports that suggest we'll demand more adaptability maybe, or protective qualities to garments. And there's obviously that shift to sustainability as well. So it'll be really interesting to see what you guys sort of think about these topics as we get going. But before I get on to any questions, I should probably introduce you all. So first up, we have Helen White, who is brand director at BAM Bamboo Clothing. BAM offers a range of garments for activities from yoga to running, and obviously, as the name suggests, it's made from bamboo fabric. Helen has many years of experience in this field, and she's also worked for companies such as Sweaty Betty. Next up is Tim Brownstone. He's the founder and CEO at Chimera. The company uses its patented infrared technology to produce wearable products that react and interact with the human body to convert heat into energy, which is pretty cool stuff, that really. And last but of course not least is Bill Byrne, who is co-founder of Ifley Road. Ifley Road is a British men's sportswear company that is centred around a passion for running. The company offers a range of running wear for men, which includes base layers, tights, shorts, waterproof jackets, and so on. And Bill actually set up the brand with his wife Claire, who they both met at a running club, which was, again, I thought was a pretty cool story. So hello and welcome everyone, and thank you very much for joining me today. Right, well, Helen, I'll come to you first actually, because I understand that when BAM was founded back in 2006, that it was maybe the first bamboo clothing company to exist in Europe at least. So I was just wondering if you could talk us through sort of the first days and changes and developments that the company has sort of seen in that time.
Okay, so yes, you're right. When Dave set up in 2006, bamboo, although there were some clothing brands that sold bits of bamboo, BAM was the only European brand that sold solely products made from bamboo. And when he started, Dave was really inspired by how sustainable bamboo was, which, you know, if you think that 14 years ago, that wasn't really on everyone's agenda, but for Dave it was something very fundamental, and so sustainability really has been at the heart of the brand right from the get-go. But what's been interesting, you know, if you look at the progression over the last 14 years, Dave actually had quite a backlash from a number of people about the fact that although bamboo was the growing of bamboo is a very sustainable thing, the production of it isn't necessarily, because there are some chemicals involved in that, and so he had this big backlash about the fact that it's not really sustainable, and so he actually stopped talking about how sustainable the product was, because he felt that it was just creating too much negative noise. And then actually I joined the business in a full-time capacity 4 years ago, and I knew that we had to start talking about it again, because it's fundamental to what we do, and because it's kind of sustainability, as I say, was at the heart of what Dave wanted. But because of Dave's experience, I knew that we were only going to be able to talk about it if we actually really properly understood what the whole process was. And so in terms of sustainability, the big thing that we've done in the last 3 or 4 years particularly has been really understand right back to the source, right back to where the bamboo is grown. We've traced all the way back so that we can really know what the impact of what we're doing is. And so, in terms of evolving as a sustainable brand, it's always started out with sustainability at the heart. But where we're at now is very much kind of having understood the impact, which was actually, incidentally, way better than we thought it was going to be. We thought when we got to China to look at how the bamboo was produced, I was like, oh, don't tell me, it's not going to be all that good. And when Merrin, our garment tech, who did an amazing job of tracing right back to the source, when she actually went out to visit, we were blown away by the fact that actually the people producing the bamboo have kind of cottoned on to the fact that this is a big deal and they needed to do something about it. And so they've actually invested an awful lot in the production of the bamboo. And so we're in this position now where we've measured our impact, and we've set ourselves some very ambitious goals to be properly impact positive in the future. So that's kind of how the brand's evolved.
Okay. Well, I think I'll probably ask you a bit more about that later on, actually, as we sort of talk about maybe sustainability. But I just want to talk to Bill quickly then. So Iffley Road, I gather, sort of stemmed from a lack of choice, both you and your wife sort of experienced from your own running gear. So can you just briefly tell us sort of the approach you took to your activewear in order to sort of fill this gap that you recognised?
Yes, well, exactly that. I mean, we've both been runners for an awful long time. I think really felt there wasn't any running kit which actually both performed well, but also looked good. A lot of the technical stuff in the market was very, overtly technical and quite loud and quite garish and not particularly well shaped. So very much we thought that there was a gap there. And really, we had to do two things. Neither of us were from a garment background ourselves. So I think the first step was to, identify a really good designer who understood our vision and could, realise that and turn that into a range of garments. And then probably the second thing really was kind of fabric selection. We knew we wanted our garments to perform every bit as well as the kind of technical ones out there, but we didn't want them to look overtly technical. So a lot of time, we probably spent a year before launching, really going through the trade shows, getting the absolute right fabrics. And I think, in terms of name, we're both slight running nerds, and we really loved this story of Iffley Road being the track where Roger Bannister broke the first 4-minute mile. It's such a great story for so many reasons. This was this tremendous feat. Some people thought a 4-minute mile was kind of physiologically impossible. So it was very much a mental barrier as well as a physical barrier. But of course, the other great thing about Bannister was he's a full-time doctor. He's the last of the great amateurs in many ways. Chris Brasher, who was one of Bannister's pacemakers, was a great kind of fell walker and stuff. So it's very much kind of encapsulated running as part of a very balanced life, which is what we're really all about. And I suppose secondly, from an aesthetic point of view, those kind of club kits from the 50s with their simple colours, simple stripe, that really kind of chimed with what we wanted to do. So it's a very natural kind of choice of name and choice of, if you like, sort of visual inspiration.
And I imagine you've actually probably had quite a lot of demand, like so many people seem to have taken up running recently. So I guess you're placed in quite a nice position at the moment.
No, we're very fortunate to be in kind of that sector at times like these. And we'll come back to that perhaps more later on. But very much. Obviously talking to Helen before we came on air, it's been, it's a real journey when you start a brand like this, and you just don't know where the time goes, really. The years fly past.
Now, Tim, I'll come to you. You do something a bit different. So for those who haven't heard of your company, do you want to just sort of better explain than I have already sort of what you do exactly and how your garments sort of help to enhance sort of the performance of athletes?
Sure. So within the Chimera Sport range and the Chimera Medical one, for that matter, we basically utilise the technology that I'd been working on while I was at university. And it captures wasted energy from the environment and the wearer. So that could be visible light, it could be body heat, it could be UV, for example. And it converts it into a different wavelength of energy. falling specifically into a very narrow bandwidth of the far infrared spectrum, which is then re-emitted back into the muscles. And that, in essence, generates a number of different biochemical reactions, which for an athlete, the sort of headline figures are that we can enhance performance, accelerate recovery, and reduce injury occurrence, which has been clinically certified, anecdotally, certified, etc., etc. And then on the medical side, I was originally, when I was a student and an academic, I was looking into the applications for wound healing, so actually healing wounds quicker using the technology. And Chimera Sport exists and still exists today to fund the ongoing medical research that the company is doing into either regulatory processes so that we can be certified as a medical device, or into now new technologies that we will be sort of incorporating alongside that first one in the future. And I'm pleased to say that about 98% of our current range is now a FDA certified and European, Australasian, etc. regulated medical device. So while people may be buying it to go for a jog on a Tuesday morning, they're actually running around in something that's FDA certified and has been scientifically proven to the nth degree.
It's very interesting. I could probably ask you many more questions, but we should probably move on and actually try and stick to the theme of this. But so obviously the thing I wanted to mention today was COVID-19. We can't really escape this at the moment. So as I mentioned at the start, one of the main consumer trends that we've witnessed is, especially during the lockdown period, was that people are taking up exercise, which of course has sort of led to a rise in activewear sales, particularly online. So how have your company sort of fared during the last few months? Bill, if I ask you that first.
Yes, I mean, we're fortunate to have fared very, very well since lockdown. I mean, monthly sales were up, 100% to 50% on last year. So it's been very, very strong. And I think, there's the terrible first few months of lockdown. One of the few bright lights was just getting out, as you were saying, Jess, earlier, for your allocated sort of chunk of exercise. We just see so many people out there running or cycling, the individuals or kind of families, and you just had that hour when you could get out, clear your head. We didn't have the aircraft overhead. There's less traffic, so that was a real silver lining. We very quickly, there's a bit of blip in sales at the start of lockdown. Then very quickly, people bought more. We got a lot of new customers. The mix of kind of new returning customers changed a lot. So so from that perspective, it's been very good for us. I mean, in terms of demand, again, we're quite fortunate. Most of our production had been launched before lockdown, and that's now arrived. There have been, a few delays, but no orders were cancelled, which we're really kind of thankful for. And then, moving ahead for next year, we've been able to increase, orders with our factories, on the anticipation the demand stays relatively strong. So yes, we've really noticed the change since COVID.
One of the probably very few people who have done quite well out of the situation. What about you, Helen? Is sort of BAM, is it a similar story or not?
A very similar story, I would say.
Okay.
We had the first 3 weeks were very tricky, as it was quite alarming, as sales dropped off a cliff really, and we weren't quite sure what was going to happen. But just before Easter, we sort of turned a corner, and then since then it's just been phenomenal. And like Bill, we've got a lot of new customers. Demand has been very, very significantly up on last year, and even with the even with the blip, we're well ahead of where we were last year. So sales have been really strong. We have and it's a lot of it has been our more active kind of product. Leggings have absolutely gone through the roof, which is fantastic. But I think that interestingly, another thing that's happening, a lot of people are talking about during pandemics, the fact that trends accelerate, and one of the things that I've been really excited about is the fact that the conversation has got much louder around sustainability, actually. And so just this idea of not just customers, but also businesses are starting to take sustainability more seriously. And so sort of those two things together for us have been fantastic, actually. So yeah, we're in a very fortunate position, which is good.
Yeah, very good. And Tim as well, sort of the same question to you. How's it been the last few months?
Yeah, so like with Bill and Helen, March was god awful for us. I think we had a 75% drop in our sort of average online sales across the year to date, financial year to date. But over the last 3.5 months, I think we're up. I think year-on-year growth has been about 450% from our online sales. So that's been fantastic. One of the things that you mentioned earlier with the trend with people looking more for protective elements in their clothing. So, not talking PPE, but in our case, it's more about the injury prevention and the recovery aspects. We've caught almost a second wave as people whom perhaps weren't training before and then started training and then started hurting because they were not used to the exercise, or just those whom may have been furloughed, for example, so they had a lot more time to do more intense training and have taken their training up a level. Again, they're suffering from the physiological effects of that. So we've caught into that sort of market with our pain relieving and sort of recovery boosting elements. And interesting, like Helen as well, our top selling products by not just revenue, but by actual unit volumes have also been the higher ticket items, whereas typically speaking, it would be the sort of gateway products of our gloves and socks. But with people looking for these benefits that our products give, the higher ticket items have really helped. And fortunately, from a supply chain standpoint, 98% of our range is made here in the UK. So while the factory was partially closed in the sense that the lady who owns our factory took part of the factory home to her summer house and was sort of doing things in her garden for us. We had a reduced capacity, but at no point have we stopped producing throughout the period. So it's been sort of swings and roundabouts in all areas. The non-consumer area of our business, which I appreciate isn't the focus of the subject here, but that hasn't yet picked back up because the majority of our sales there were into professional sporting institutions, and until they're all back up selling tickets and bringing in marketing revenue, the budgets are all on sort of discretionary freezes at the moment.
Right, okay. And well, Tim, actually I wanted to stick with you and actually ask about this, because the topic of sort of health and well-being and everything is quite important at the moment. So do you think it's not necessarily that sort of the physiological things, but the mental sort of health aspect, people are coming to you more now because they just want to get out and look after themselves?
Yeah, absolutely. And we have been doing work to try and since the start to try and help with that. Sort of work with some of the affiliate coaches that sort of we've partnered with for a few years to host online classes, etc. And that has been building up small communities, for each of those independent coaches. And a large part of the feedback coming back is the mental aspect. Now, with regards to the changes that we've seen over the last month or so, as lockdown in the UK at least has stepped back a level, we are seeing a mix between those who are ready to get going because they're getting a bit stir crazy looking at the same four walls. We're seeing anxiety from people who are hesitant to get back and resume what would be their normal competition schedule if competitions are starting to pick back up again. And then we're also seeing people who aren't, that they're exercising as a lifestyle choice, but now that they're in fortunate positions whereby they've got their job security confirmed, they're coming back off furlough. They realize, they're now looking at the fact that they haven't spent a huge amount over the last 6 months, and they have a large amount of disposable income and are treating themselves. So we're seeing those sort of three very different areas of our customer segments. And as I say, two of them are positively looking forwards, and the others are a bit hesitant to really start getting back out, and I justifiably so.
Mm. It's funny you say there actually about the treating yourselves, because even myself, just I usually would commute by train. I'm saving a good £100 or so a month just on not traveling. So you do, in a way, you have got more income at the moment to sort of splurge on these things. So it's quite interesting. Um, and well, obviously you've mentioned there sort of about the physical benefits, mental, and sustainable innovation is massively sort of grown recently as well. I mean, it has been for the last few years, but I feel like now it's, I don't know, it's really sort of hit the ground running. So, Helen, I mean, what has your experience of this sort of demand for more sustainable activewear been like from consumers? I mean, you mentioned there that you're trying to become sort of impact positive and so on. So, do you mind just sort of expanding on that?
So yes, I mean, we are finding that that customers are definitely interested in sustainability, but I think it's important to kind of differentiate though, because I don't think it is or probably ever will be the main reason that someone buys something. I think they buy something because they love it, it does what they want it to do, and it's the right price, and that will always be the case. And actually, sustainability, and this is key for us really, we're not being sustainable so that we can sell more stuff. We're being sustainable because we believe that's what we should be doing. And so I think there is a difference to those things. And I think, you know, as our impact positive strategy is all based on the fact that we understand now what our footprint is across carbon and chemicals and land and water and people, and we want to make sure that we're having a positive impact in the world rather than a negative one. And so that's the thing that's been driving us. And it is as I say, it's a result of because that's what we believe we should be doing, not because necessarily of the demand that's coming from customers.
Okay. And Tim, what about you? I mean, does sustainability really filter into your company, or are people worried about that?
Sadly, similar to as Helen's quite concisely put, I don't think it will ever be the point that it is the deciding factor. And for a long time, you know, we've never really made a huge point out of the fact that we've always had a strong element of UK manufacture, because a lot of people would prefer it was £10-20 cheaper and made in the Far East. But it has always been core to our mission. So I'm pleased to say that everything we've produced since last October, with our technology and any other composite materials that we've been using in the fabrics, has either been sustainably sourced natural fibers or a recycled polyester. And when we first started the business, at that point, the virgin and recycled polyesters were too far apart in terms of price point that we just couldn't quite afford to go with the recycled straight away. So we've seen a lot closer to parity now, but one of the core missions when we first started was, okay, we can't do all of the different sustainable practices that we would really like to do, so what can we do to offset it instead? And as such, you know, the average mainstream sports garment is its lifetime is 50 washes, you know, as defined by Nike, Adidas, etc. So we made the decision straight away that we want a garment to last at least 2 years, because every 9 months beyond that 50 wash period, if you're averaging at a wash a week, you offset the carbon emissions for that garment by 30%. So we thought, well, if we can just extend garment lifetime, then okay, we can't afford right now to use all of the different sustainable practices that we'd like throughout the supply chain. We can at least make a difference there. And now we're sort of achieving both ends, and you know, I'm very proud of that fact.
Well, it's funny because when people talk about sustainability, there are just so many routes you can take to say that you're a sustainable company, and what works for someone else might not work for you. I mean, Bill, again, is sustainability quite low down on sort of your customers' priority list, or what?
I mean, I'd say very similar kind of message really from Helen and Tim. It's certainly there. I mean, our customer base is probably male, 35 plus, quite a conservative mindset. So perhaps not, without meaning to stereotype, not the sort of group you'd expect to be, to be leading the sustainable charge. And again, it's something we've always wanted to be as sustainable as possible. But again, it's not, front and centre of our brand. So we will talk about the origin of our fabrics and stuff, on product pages in our story. It probably wasn't an issue at all when we first launched, but it's gradually increasing. I'd say we do get, people asking about our fabrics and our recycled offering. We had one customer just yesterday would cancel an order because this was a garment we're not making through recycled fabrics yet, because he'd found one that he felt better at buying. So I would say it's coming, but gradually. But again, a lot of it does come down to not so much price for us, but it's more, I suppose, really liking the look of the garment. Does it perform well? And then the kind of, sustainability is perhaps a secondary criteria underneath that.
Mm. Well, I mean, I guess as well for you three in particular, I mean, Tim especially, you're offering something quite unique, and people, if they've managed to find your brand and what you do, they're not going to just chuck it straight away. That it's going to mean more to them because it's got that extra benefit. And again, with you, Helen and Bill, you've got nice stories as well, which I think people really tune into and like to own something with a background instead of it just being a high street shop that has got no sort of sentimental value to it almost. So I guess it's difficult to compare you guys to maybe Nike and Adidas, etc. But it's interesting to hear that sustainability isn't actually maybe as high up on people's agenda as maybe I thought. So I mean, on the other hand, I mean, what do you guys think about greenwashing? I mean, I feel like there's quite a few companies that maybe say they're sustainable, they market certain things, but actually if you were to dig deeper, it's maybe not the case. So, I mean, Bill, what do you think about that?
Yes, I mean, I wasn't very familiar with the term actually before this interview. I'm reminded a bit, I know this isn't quite greenwashing, but I used to really religiously buy these kind of charity Christmas cards each year. But then when you look at it, it's actually such a small percentage of the kind of sales of cards go to charity. I think, greenwashing can be a bit like that, can't it? But I think increasingly, I think consumers are pretty savvy now, pretty well informed, and I think they'll kind of call out companies if they think they're overstating their green credentials. And I think Tim was absolutely spot on. I think the biggest single thing we can do as garment manufacturers is make clothing that lasts. I think fast fashion is just the devil's work. It really is not. It's just so bad for the environment. I mean, Claire and I have got prototype tops we made in 2012 of this lovely merino wool, which we still run in. And I think it's absolutely what Tim was saying about, let's make garments out of good quality fabrics, which are well made, and just last and last and last. I think that's, if you do that, I think you can't really be accused of greenwashing.
Helen, have you got anything to add to that?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's I think greenwashing on the face of it is a terrible thing. I think the reality is, though, there is a positive in there, in that at least people are recognising that they need to talk about it. So there is some positive in there. Yeah. The noise is getting louder, and the louder the noise gets, the more likely it is that the system will change, which is what needs to happen, basically. But I think there's been something really interesting that's happened during lockdown, actually, which I think is potentially a bit more of a game changer, and that's with the likes of, so Zalando back in May, they announced that they were going to start demanding that brands that sell on their site have full traceability of all their products. And in fact, yesterday, Selfridges did a similar thing where they're saying that all of their brands, this is are going to have to be able to show traceability. And I think the kind of the traceability and the accreditation that's starting to happen is going to mean that brands that don't have that kind of full visibility of what their supply chain is are going to get called out, because they can't actually sell in those places that they want to be selling. And so I think there's a shift happening that's going to mean that greenwashing won't, people are either going to have to, there'll be a commercial imperative to actually to do things properly rather than just talk about them. And so I feel like the world is shifting, which is a good thing.
And Tim as well, I mean, is that something you're also sort of seeing or you would agree with? Or
yeah, so the points that Helen's made about Selfridges and Zalando is I think is companies now in a position whereby they can afford to make that decision, and therefore their suppliers have to follow the trend. But equally, the point that Helen made about the fact that it is being discussed, that puts it into the consumer mindset. And importantly, another fact that's ignored with greenwashing is that even if a company is doing it for the wrong reason, i.e. they're doing it for their bottom line to sell more rather than because they actually care about sustainability, as long as it has a net positive impact, then it's better than if they just were doing nothing. And I actually had a colleague from back when I was an academic who turned down a job as a sustainability compliance officer at a company because she went to an interview and found that she just didn't feel that it was a genuine intent. It was because the company felt they should, because of almost peer pressure, as opposed to because they actually had a want. And as I said, that if there's still a net positive impact, then it's better than nothing. And we're in a position right now where everything helps. And if you start with better than nothing, it doesn't take long to then actually realize the benefits that has on the wider part, and it starts to become more and get more deeply entrenched within a company's ethos.
Right, okay. Now moving sort of away from sustainability then, what other trends have you guys sort of noticed maybe over the last few months? I mean, I said at the beginning of this session that people might looking for more protective things or more adaptable clothing. I mean, would you agree with this, or are there any other trends that you've noticed that you might want to explore a bit further? Tim, I'll come back to you first, actually, if that's all right.
Yeah, so as I mentioned earlier, we've been benefiting from consumers that are now looking for a functional difference because of literally pain points that they've started suffering from that perhaps they weren't before. Fortunately, that's coming with a big boost in organic growth for us, as well as we're getting, as those clients come in and they experience the benefit, then they pass that on, and the spread organically seems to be going a lot further at the moment than we would normally, comparatively to historic figures, which I wonder whether that's because people have more time on their hands because they're in a closer proximity, i.e. in terms of now just going around and having a coffee with a neighbour at lunchtime or something. Outside of that, we've been interested in looking into the different areas of sort of your bargain, your mainstream, and your premium areas of the market in terms of where the peaks and troughs have come there. And it does seem that the premium area of the market has had a bigger peak than we certainly would have expected coming into this, which perhaps that's indicative of the sort of spare capital that the consumer has to bear, whether that's also just because people have got more time to think about what they're buying and they're making a more educated decision. I'm not sure. But we are seeing, as I say, that premium area of the market doing better than I think we would have forecasted at the start of the pandemic.
And well, Helen, I mean, you and Bill are both nodding your head there. So, I mean, what sort of things have you noticed, or what would you like to add?
So, I mean, for us, really, apart from the things that we've already talked about, the big one has been the digital shift. So that kind of, so obviously lots of consumers moving towards purchasing digitally. That's kind of obviously benefiting, I'm sure it's benefiting all of us because people who've got shops are obviously really struggling, but with just the, much more traffic on the website has been a good thing. But I think that I've been really excited by this digital shift in terms of engaging in activity online, so doing online yoga classes, and in fact we've set up a whole bunch of online classes. We're doing yoga and HIIT classes now that's had such strong engagement. It's been fantastic, and that's something that I think previously the thought of being able to run a yoga class online, it just seems ridiculous, but now it's just part of everyday life. And I think things like that have been a fantastic thing for us, because for us it helps to build our community, which is a really strong thing. So I think that digital shift has been very significant for us.
And Bill, what about you?
I mean, in some ways, running's almost like the perfect lockdown sport, because it's the perfect thing to do on your own in a small group, and I suppose also you're not going to be out in the elements for ages. Most people run for half an hour or something. I would just add two things from a product point of view. One thing we've really noticed is a very strong demand for lightweight waterproofs. In the past, these very much be an autumn-winter item, but I think now, probably because of climate change, we do a lightweight gilet which sells all year round. If you think of just the terrible summer thunderstorms we had recently, you can see why. And I think secondly, like Helen, just that kind of engaging content people really cry out for. We find we've got quite a wide-ranging blog, but some of our blogs on kind of diet and sleep and staying strong as you age, we see a lot of kind of interest in that kind of content as well.
Okay, interesting. Right, well, I mean, there's so many other things I could probably ask you guys, but we will have to sort of wrap up. But before you go, let's sort of talk about what all of your respective companies are currently working on, maybe in future, what you've got in the pipeline. So, Tim, how will you sort of continue to develop your garments? I mean, are you looking at any new technologies or what?
So on the infrared side, it's mostly about a range expansion, but bringing in, as I say, all of this is a more sustainably sourced supply chain throughout. And then in terms of the new technologies, since 2016, we've been working on the integration of electronics into fabrics and fibers. And we, as of the start of October, will be supplying our first cardiological research study with Imperial NHS Trust and Imperial College in London, because we embarked on a journey basically with the mission of being able to diagnose a heart attack 2 days before it happens by building the technology into the clothing that we wear. And we are on the cusp of achieving that. We just need to get some more data in to validate the algorithms. But technologically, we've made really huge leaps and strides, and especially over the last 6 months, we committed to continuing the push on the R&D side, because there is such a clear need for it, and rising need at the moment with remote monitoring. And then, we will start seeing that feeding into sort of our active side of things with different sporting sales for either general day-to-day activity tracking, just with a better accuracy and sort of a different way of doing it, or getting a bit more advanced and looking into sort of injury prevention and detection through the enablement of the technology in the fabrics as well.
Gosh, that's very, very exciting stuff. I mean, especially you mentioned there remote monitoring. Obviously, this year that's really important, and also the NHS in this country is so overwhelmed. If you could predict a heart attack 2 days before, then surely that will, well, not only save that person's life, but it's going to hopefully sort of support the rest of the National Health Service, which would be amazing.
Right, it's interesting that when we first started on that particular project, we started speaking with cardiologists who all leapt at the opportunity, and we want to work with this, and we're lucky now to be working with some of the leading cardiologists in the world on the project. But when we then started speaking to doctors in emergency rooms, their initial response was to put up walls and say, "Oh God, you're not going to send us more patients, are you?" And to which we replied, "Well, no, the intent is that we send you the right patients at the right time, so that they're not, they haven't been brought in by an ambulance having had a heart attack. They come in so that you can do a less labor intensive process to prevent it, or you're there because some heart attacks, sadly, they're going to happen and you just have to ride it out, so to speak. But they're in a safe environment for it to happen. which therefore, overall will reduce strain on you guys. And so we hope that we will be able to fit into a larger infrastructure, which will include hospital systems becoming smarter, through the use of things like satellite data, for example. So if we can know what the traffic on the road is looking like, what the hospitals we work with, what their emergency rooms look like in terms of volumes, and then we also know what's happening with the individual patient, then in theory you can direct someone to the best hospital based on their need and the hospital's ability to service them, the time to travel there. And that's not all going to be us, and if it is, then we'll need an awful lot of investment to achieve it all. But that's the world that we're starting to move to. And for us, it's important that our clothing does more than just look pretty or protect us from the elements, but we can actually start building computing power into the fabrics, which is quite nice, because the very original computer code, which was written by Ada Byron back in, I think it was the 1800s, was inspired by binary punch cards from the weaving industry. So it's quite nice that we're the computing and textiles has developed in parallel, but inspired one to the other, and we're now, us and other companies like us, are joining them back together again.
Yeah, definitely. Well, we'll have to keep our eyes peeled for all of that. Bill, what about you guys? Have you got anything in the pipeline, or maybe working on any partnerships at all, for example?
Tim's a hard act to find. Nothing groundbreaking as that. But, I think we're very much sticking to our knitting, sticking to what we know. We just want to keep making clothes which people really love to run in. Obviously, you're transitioning all our garments across to recycled fabrics. We found a really nice, super lightweight fabric for some summer running vests, which I think is made out of recycled polyester and coffee grounds for some reason. So we were prototyping that. We found collaborations work very well for us in the past. So we're really keen to, we're investigating lightweight, ultra distance running packs, shoes as well. We're in discussion with a few shoe manufacturers. So really, I think very much more of the same, and just keeping people out running, really.
Okay. And then Helen as well. I mean, what are you guys up to? Is the focus mainly on this impact positive journey, or what else is going on?
So, there is a lot of focus on the impact positive journey, but we've got a couple of other great things. So one of them is we've been developing some bamboo denim for the last 3 years, and which we're going to be launching in a few weeks, which is active denim. So it's been tested on professional climbers as they were climbing up rock faces, which has been fantastic. But it's also part of the whole Ellen MacArthur jeans redesign project, because denim is one of the most polluting of all clothes that we wear, and so they've come up with a list of criteria that you have to abide by in order to produce more sustainable denim. And so we're kind of part of the Ellen MacArthur jeans redesign as well. So we're really excited about the denim, because not only all of those things, because it's bamboo, they are incredibly soft. So they are great jeans to be wearing. So we've got those coming out next month. And then the other thing that I'm really excited about, which is kind of all tied in with the impact positive thing, is we've tied up with a company called Green Story, who have actually helped us to measure the impact of our fibres compared to conventional cotton. And so next month, when you look at a product on our website, each product, it will tell you how much water you've saved, how much less carbon emissions there are than a conventional cotton, whatever it is, t-shirt or pair of pants or pair of socks. And so people can actually tangibly see the difference of our bamboo products versus a conventional cotton product. So those are a couple of things that we've got coming up that we're quite excited about.
That's a really nice touch.
Yeah.
I think definitely that idea of transparency. I think I have to admit, even myself now, I was doing some online shopping recently, and I was from doing this job, I've started realizing, looking for the fibers. I mean, Tencel, I think in particular, but I think it's lensing. A lot of their stuff is now actually turning into fashion, and you just think, so now you can spot it. And I think it's just really interesting for customers to sort of know about it. Yeah. Right. Well, guys, I mean, I think that's everything. It's been really interesting to talk to you all, and thank you again for joining me today. I mean, wish you all the very best for all of these plans and for the future. And so, yes, thank you.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you very much.
I should also thank everyone actually for tuning into today's roundtable. I mean, like the future of healthcare and so on, I think these virtual platforms are really, really important. So for everyone else who'll be watching, take care, look after yourselves, and see you soon.
Thank you. Bye, everyone.